Now it's the top of the hour, so as you're already here and right on time, I suggest we get started. I hope you can hear me well. If you want me to speak up a bit, let me know. And you should be able to see my screen already. And allow me to quickly summarize what you can actually expect to learn today and what are we going to talk about. Today's subject is around structured writing, and what you can expect that we are going to go through today is the following. So, first of all, by the end of this session, you should be able to explain what is actually structured writing. You will be able to name specific benefits from using and applying structured writing in your work, and you will be able to recognize when your documentation can benefit from structured writing. And I'm going to give it a try to show you with an exercise that we will do together how to actually make our documentation better by applying structured writing. During this session, I will be glad if you are able to speak. I don't know if you are in a place where you can talk and whether it's fine for you to speak up. But as I hope that we will be having a discussion around this subject, it would be great if you unmute yourself and speak up every time you have any questions or comments on what we are going to talk about. If you are not able to speak or you're not in a position to do so, feel free to use the chat. I have opened it here so that I can see it if you type any questions or comments on what we are discussing. Okay, first, would that be an interesting subject for you? Is that what you were hoping to learn and talk about today? Type it in the chat or unmute yourself and let me know if that is what you were hoping to find out about today. Okay, excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Aaron. Okay, so yeah, let's then jump into the details, right? So before I jump actually into the actual details, first of all, is there someone who does not know who I am and what I'm doing? You know, I'll just quickly summarize because I don't know if you all know me. So my name is Jordan Stanchev. I'm a user assistance development architect and I work at one of the largest software development companies of the world, SAP. And as part of what I'm doing there, I frequently had to also train colleagues in technical writing and software documentation development. So one day I've worked on those items in such a way that I thought to myself, maybe I can go even outside our company with this information because so many people are interested into that. And so I started teaching also at local universities and actually international universities nowadays. And I've also established this School of Technical Writing, JP where I share the knowledge that I have from my work into how documentation is written, into how software documentation is supposed to look like, and user assistance as such. So this is how I started creating courses around technical writing and technical communications. If you have any questions around my background, feel free to ask or just let me know. Right now, what you can see is a bunch of courses that are available on my platform, jpdocuteachable.com. And the subject we are discussing today around structured writing is a part of the course around how to write software documentation. I don't know whether all of you are enrolled in this course or not, but in case the entire course is what is interesting for you, this is the link to the actual course content. Now, without further ado, let's talk about structured writing, right? So the first question that I have and I would like to ask to you is, first of all, what do you think is structured writing? Again, feel free to just write it in the chat or unmute yourself and speak up to let me know what do you know about structured writing and what do you think is structured writing. Okay. Melanie is saying structured writing is human machine readable writing. Thank you. Everyone is saying organized systematic approach to written information. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for these definitions of structured writing. Let's take a look at what I've found as a definition. And this is also what I understand when I say structured writing, okay? So first of all, the structured writing is a form of technical writing that we use, especially when we talk about technical writing as such. It allows you to identify the different types of information you're going to present to the end user and allows you to structure the content. In general, you can see that this term is actually coined by Robert Horn, who is, I would say, one of the most important people who influenced technical writing and information architecture for technical communications, I would say. The entire concept of structured writing and information mapping actually is what you will see later on is used and is in the core of DITA as one of the ways to structure the information and write in a structured manner. And in this research of Horn and his team, they have identified like 2,200 common block types. But the most important for us are concept, procedure, process, principle, fact, structure, and classification. And later on, we are going to use some of those information types and see how this can be applied in our documentation. The other foundational concept that you will see that is deeply related to the subject of structured writing is the stop concept. And in this concept, which is created by another team almost at the same time when the overall term structured writing appeared, another team was researching two different concepts. Whether you should be writing an endless flow of text, which is the river raft concept, and you just write all the content top to bottom, and the figures that you put, the pictures in your text, are like the stones in the river. So this is the river raft concept. And they compared that to a concept in which you break down the information into, how to say it, smaller consumable units, the different topics that were offered to the end user, to see which one is perceived better and how does the different ways of presenting the information affect the end user. So for us in technical writing, these are two foundational concepts which affect how we organize the content and how we can actually apply structuring over the content. Now that you know what is structured writing, I want to ask you, and again, you feel free to just type it in the chat, why do we need to structure our writing? What are the benefits from writing in a structured manner? Okay. Or what do you think the benefits are if you are not yet using this strategy? Okay, so Swat, thank you. You're saying easier to understand by the reader. Okay. Aaron is suggesting dissemination of information that can be easily understood and accessed. Very good point. Value is suggesting it's about breaking the information into information types that allows the readers to understand it easily. So you believe that if the content is broken down into smaller information units, it's easier by the readers to understand, right? I think this is like a summary of what you said. Okay. Okay, thanks a lot. Can you come up with other ideas? What else? I will show you my list in a second if you do not come up with more ideas. Why do we need to care about structure in writing? Any other ideas? Okay, easier to follow when creating the documentation. An excellent point, I would say. Thanks, Svetoslav, for that. Okay, let me show you then what I have prepared. Yes, values adding also to be able to comprehend info on our own. Okay, very well. Thanks a lot. Here is the list that I have prepared, and I wanted to explain to you why structured writing is such a fundamental concept. And you can see here the list, but I believe it's also important to understand why this is so much relevant for us. In the preliminary announcement for this session, I've allowed myself to make I would say, a dare statement that technical writing is not so much about the language. I've been in way too many situations in which I was approached by native speakers and people with other backgrounds not in technical writing, which would be focused so much on the language aspect of the technical writing. But the whole point is that this is not the most important in technical writing. Usually, the technical writing and technical communications as such include so many other aspects, which are actually addressed using structured writing. So first of all, and maybe one of the most important things you have to understand here is that structured writing allows you to organize large amounts of material. What do I mean by that? And now, if you work in a small team or in a small company, pay attention to that, because I believe this is one of the most important differences between people who work in small companies and want to transition into a larger company. The writing that you do when you write by yourself looks completely different when you have to work and write in a team. if you are a part of a small company or just growing startup, imagine it like this, or you're simply the first and only information architect and technical writer in your company, usually you write the user guides that you create, the software documentation by yourself. And at that point in time, you don't have to deal with other people material that you need to combine into one user guide. But imagine that, and hopefully your company grows, and as a result, you have more and more content that you need to organize. And at one point in time, you will be more than one technical writer working on the content. At this moment in time, if two of you come together and have different styles of writing, you will no longer have the smooth user experience with the documentation, simply because different people have different styles of writing. But if you establish rules and structure in writing, most probably these differences in style will no longer affect the way the content is written. And other than that, if you continue to grow, usually will emerge the need for an information architect or a project lead to organize the different parts of information, the different topics that you write, into one larger deliverable. This is the starting point in which you will begin to organize the information architecture of your content. So how many of you here in this call are actually part of such small team? Are you working in a small team, like one, maximum two people, or you have already to work in large teams with more than two technical writers, and you know what I'm talking about here? Okay. So you have a team of 3 writers already. That's good. How about the rest of you? It's 2 people, but you feel already the difference that I'm talking about. And now imagine if more people come to your team, the whole fun will be amazing. And so thanks for answering this question. This is you can easily turn that into a winning point for you in future, I would say. If you are the person who takes care for the organization of the topics, you will soon experience the need for becoming an information architect, as we call it, or at least a project manager who knows how to organize content, which could be a career path for you to take if that's what you want. But very often technical writers who write in Word documents are stuck because they have to organize all the content at once. Remember the picture that I showed with the river raft concept? You know, even if you apply structured writing in Word documents, you still have this perception of the river raft concept. You always have to scroll top to bottom to see where you started and where you end in the documentation. It's much difficult to see those different pieces of information that you need to organize to bring a consistent user experience to the user. So structured writing is so important for us because this allows us to work in a team of authors. And it's also important for your career, believe it or not. So I already mentioned, this will allow you to organize and structure the content. The goal is to provide this consistent experience to the user. If you don't use the same structure of the content, the users will have to learn your unique authoring style every time they read a new topic in this documentation written by somebody else. That's not a consistent and good user experience. Ensuring the completeness of documentation. is another thing that we aim to do with structured writing. I believe that I've seen at least some of you already in the webinars where we talked about project management and how we can organize the structure of the software documentation. There, one of the strategies that I explained was how you use a mind map to represent and indicate which are the different topics you need to write as a part of your user guide. And the structured writing is exactly what allows you to have this fine granularity that of the content which you can present with this mind map. And this way ensure that all the documentation that must be there and is planned to be delivered is put in the right place and is written, because you can check that and cross-check that in the end. You will not forget some topic, and all of that is enabled by applying structured writing. Targeting content to varying audiences is something which I believe is more relevant for those of you who work in data, and or at least in an environment in which you can apply variations over the content. You can selectively choose what topics to include or exclude from the finally produced output. Again, this will not break your entire documentation if you are using the structured approach. And as you can see, this allows you to improve the documentation a lot and work jointly as a team. What are the different information types we are going to look at, and we are going to talk about in this session? So remember a few minutes ago I said that Robert Horn has identified like 200 different information types. But I believe that for our needs as technical writers, these are the most important information types, because usually these are the type of information we need to provide in our content. And how do we actually benefit and leverage those information types? I'm sure many of you know already I'm a big fan of Dita, and Dita already stepped on this information concept. So those of you who already write in Dita maybe are familiar already with the different information types which are already presented in Dita. There you have concept, task, and reference. Of course, you can define your own information type, your own template in Dita, but this one comes like by design. The task topic type allows you to answer questions like how do I do something, and outline exactly what are the prerequisites, what are the specific steps to follow, what are the results you are getting. The reference type of topic allows you to collect factual materials. Let's say, think about tables with different attributes or parameters that you want to present to your end user, just as a table, no details around that. This could be organized into a reference topic type. And concept is for topics which aim to answer questions like, what is this thing, or how does this actually work in the backend, in which you explain an architecture or any concept that you have for your content. So three very powerful information types that you kind of get by design in Dita. But not everyone actually writes in Dita. And what I was thinking about was the following. Many times I'm faced with very, very interesting challenges, like how do you structure in an unstructured environment? Those of you who write in wikis without any templates, or you just have to write in Word documents, or you just write KBAs without any structure, know exactly what I'm talking about. the result from an unstructured environment is usually unstructured documentation, right? So how can you bring such structure to the documentation? And in this course, I believe you will find it interesting if you already write in Wiki. I'll paste the chat here. I've prepared some templates that you can already consider and use for your content. So it's just an idea that I would like to share with you in case you can benefit from that and just apply it to your own environment. Before I show you the template, so in what environment are you currently writing? Can you type it in the chat? Do you write in Dita? Do you write in wikis without structure? Do you write in Word documents? What is the environment in which you work? Okay, Word, Confluence, okay. Knowledge base, okay. But, knowledge base, is it again in Wiki, or it's unstructured environment, if I get you right, Melanie, right? Google Docs, wow, cool. Okay, okay. Just CMS, okay. Very well, thank you. So the environments in which you work, from my perspective, are not very friendly to anyone who wants to see structure in their content. It could be very hard. So that's why I thought, how can I do that if I had to work in such an unstructured environment? And usually a concept that I would suggest that you give it a try is to create your own templates, to give it a sense of a structure throughout your content. And at the beginning of my career, like 20 years ago, I was also writing in Word. This was our starting environment. We were writing in Word documents, and then those Word documents were submitted into a database where we were organizing them. We were using Perforce at one point in time. And every author, although we were writing in an unstructured Word environment, we still had to follow some templates. And those templates allowed us to have this notion of structure even in an unstructured writing environment. The templates that you see here are not what we used to create. So these are what I've created myself for my students. And think about them as just as an idea. And in your own environment, if you like the concept of structured writing, you can also think about the different information types you apply and you use in your own company. This could give you this notion of structure that you want to present to your end users. So if I have to apply this to my content, I would go with a concept, and here is how a template may look like. So in my case, this is a concept. It stops here with the example. It starts with a summary where I just explain to anyone using this template, this structure, what is the intended use of summary. Then I provide a detailed overview where I would provide the actual conceptual information. And optionally, I can provide an example around this concept. So this is one idea of how you can organize your content. How would a task or a sequence of steps to follow can look like? Again, it would start with a summary, which would just with one or two sentences give the notion of what I'm going to read here. Then I move on with prerequisites, which explains the set of facts or information that I need to perform, or otherwise there's no point in even trying to continue to read this task topic. And then are the actual steps. After the steps, optionally, I can provide information about the result and, very important, an example. Very often, I've seen how the users will just go and look at the example and skip everything else. The Siri is very much keen on answering questions. And the last template is for the reference, like a free flow of information aimed towards table formats primarily, or any type of reference you want to provide. There, I would suggest something like the summary, then you just present the information you are looking for. Again, if you want to have this notion of structuring for your content, this is one thing you can do for your company. If you are working in a small team and you are just starting to do so, that could be key for you to grow forward. Because if your software is successful, and it means that more and more people will be purchasing that, and your teams will be growing, as well as the amount of information you have to present. So bringing a structure and consistency in your content can be done even in an unstructured environment. So this is the first hint that I have for you. How many of you like this idea? Is that something you are already doing, or it's something new for you as a concept?
Yes, I can share my experience, Jordan.
Yes.
In my company, we were 3 people, tech writers. So at the beginning, it was really obvious who is doing what, because there was difference in the structure of the documents.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it really looks unprofessional if one writer is doing a similar task with one structure and the other writer the same type of task, a totally different structure, different style.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very important to align ourselves, and we just decided on what structure we will follow, so that whenever we have a new task, everybody knows which section should contain his document. And to tell you the truth, our documentation was a hybrid between concept, task, and reference, because it's a more complicated feature.
Mm-hmm.
And there are also features which are task related, concept related, reference related. So it was like a really huge document. And if we didn't have a structure on which to align, it would be very hard to operate at all in a team. So even though we were operating in a non-structured environment like Confluence, we aligned on our structure, and I can tell that in the last couple of months, our deliverables looked similar, and it was very hard to tell which writer was writing which document.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I totally agree that structured writing is maybe the basis of technical writing, and especially when you write in a team. And it's very important to follow a common structure in this respect.
Excellent. So you already found your way through that, which is super great.
Yes, in collaboration with the product owner, because we don't have information architect in our company. So we proposed to the product owner what the structure should be, and she said, okay, this is it, and let's follow this
Excellent.
from now on.
I'm very glad to hear that. Yes. Great. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. How about the rest of the group? Is that something you already do, or it's something new that you can consider for your content? Feel free to speak up or just type in the chat. Okay, so it seems no one else wants to share. Okay, no problem with that. Let's then move on to the actual most fun part, I would say, for today, which is the actual exercise in writing. Yeah. Okay. Okay, I see now in the chat your replies. Okay, so this is nothing new as a concept, but it's still not implemented. And also, Melanie is moving from unstructured PDF to other forms. Exactly, exactly. I hope you will benefit from this idea, because the sooner you implement structure, the easier it is. And again, to explain, and I move on then to the next item, to explain why I've created the templates like this, and I suggest this structure. Because it's not only the documentation that benefits from that. And a side effect from having the right structure of your content, especially when you produce HTML output, it will have an impact on the searchability of your content. And who could have thought about that? In the last couple of months, schema.org and namely Google has been working on implementing particular snippets which directly show an answer to customers' questions. So imagine you are in Google and you search for, let's say, how to configure my CRM. And people would simply write exactly that. They go to Google and type how to search, how to configure CRM, and they name their CRM, for example. And instead of just giving them a bunch of links to choose from, Google is now trying to give the answer to the question. And in order to give the answer to the question, Google is looking into your content, tries to analyze its structure, and show the answer to the question, and then a link to your documentation in this question, which is so much help for the user. And the structure in writing is exactly at the core of this entire attempt of Google to give directly the answers, which is, I would say, pretty cool experience for the end user. And right now, nobody can tell you whether this impacts the SEO for your content. But if you have content which is written in a structured way, you have better chances of giving the answer for your customer. And as technical writers, usually this is exactly what we are looking for, to provide the right answer for our end users. So the templates and the structure that I suggest here is something that can be easily also understood by this algorithm, which is crawling the content, indexing, and can narrow down the focus on what are the steps that answer the customer question, for example, or what is the answer to the question of what is this specific concept, and tries to look up inside it. So very, very important topic for all of us. But enough about that part. Here is what I have prepared for you today. In this second link that I will now paste in the chat so that you can also open it, I have tried to work on documentation which is not structured. Originally, I was thinking of picking some of the works that I'm receiving from my students and use them as examples, but then I said, maybe somebody will feel blamed for that. This sample that I have written myself is like an attempt to collect what I've seen throughout the years, which very often people call my software documentation, because it explains how to use a specific software application, right? And I've tried to kind of put parts of the things that actually should not be there. So let's see if you will be able to also see that when you look into the content. The other thing which is interesting about this example is relevant for those of you who maybe are considering to work as technical writers. I don't know whether everybody watching are actually technical writers or just want to be technical writers. At least I know that I have many students who just aspire to be technical writers. Very often, if you go to a job interview, you will be given exactly a text like this, and you will be asked to create software documentation out of it. And very often, if you do not have the eye of the technical writer, you will say, but this is already software documentation. What do they want from me? The most important thing that you need to find here is to be able to identify the missing structure in this content. That's one thing. The other thing is when I speak to software developers who give me raw software documentation that they have written and they believe this is the documentation that everybody will appreciate. Why they think so? Because it is full of absolutely every possible detail that they could ever have thought of. And your job here is to bring structure to this information and take out the unnecessary information from the picture. Because the end result of such style of writing is a mumbo jumbo that people call software documentation, but this is definitely not well-written technical documentation. It's unstructured, it's poorly organized, and you can already see how it mixes together concepts and tasks. At the same time, just to continue to nail down on the actual problem here, I've seen technical writers with years of experience in technical writing who still write like this. They do not structure their content, and one of the sure ways for you, and now maybe this would be, if you remember this, that would be great. Every time you start your task with using or any generic thing which describes 10 different tasks inside it, this is not well-structured documentation. I've seen it so many times, how people write this way, even if they're experienced technical writers. Usually these are the people who would criticize me for my English or for a typo that they found in the documentation that I present. But in the end, the topic, even if it's written in a great English, not good, great English, with no typos, it is still very hard to understand and analyze. Okay, so in the next 5 minutes, I would like to ask you to tell me what exactly are the problems you see here, and let's together criticize on this sample so that you get a feeling of how it actually should look like. Okay. So who wants to give it a try and tell me which are the parts that you see in this text which you believe require structuring, and also tell me, or if you want, write it, how it is actually supposed to look like. Who wants to be the volunteer here to speak up and analyze this text together with me?
Okay, if nobody else wants, I can do it, Dancho.
Okay, thanks and congratulations for speaking up.
And this looks even worse than as if it was written by a developer. I've seen developers that are actually have really good technical writing skills.
Absolutely, for sure.
Yeah, but yeah, it's an exception. But sometimes you get to see really good internal documentation as well.
For sure.
And this is great luck for you because it simplifies your task a lot. But here, this is a total mambo jumbo in my opinion. This text, no structure at all.
What are the problems that you see? And also, you can write in the chat what are the problems that you see in this text.
I see parts from the concept information type, such as in the first paragraph. This is something like an overview, the second sentence. First sentence, I think, can be omitted as a whole because we have the topic using the calculator up. So first sentence, I would erase. And then we have the overview. This application is the best way for you to perform arithmetic operations and so on. Then second paragraph.
Let's stay for a second from this second sentence, because I constantly receive such type of submissions from students. Every time I hear something like the best application out there, the coolest thing ever, this is what I call marketing talk. The customer has already purchased the calculator application. That's why he or she is reading and trying to solve a problem. Trying to sell it one more time to them when they have a problem is not that a good idea. So when I hear how this is the best thing I can do, I'm always imagining a situation like this. A customer is angry because he or she needs to read the documentation. And right now, when I tell them this is the best application ever, the customer is just thinking, can I just go and purchase something else, which is really going to do the job? This is the part which frustrates the reader. It does not help to tell them that you have the best app, because it might not be the right thing to do.
So technical documentation is not to pitch the readers and to make prospects to them, but just to explain something. Unless it's a sales-oriented documentation when you have to market something to the audience.
Absolutely, but this should be a different information deliverable. Very often there are technical writers which are part of marketing teams, or people who come from marketing background and are thought into this style of writing, which is supposed to be catchy, attention grabbers, focusing you to go to the next step and so on. Here the idea is not to convince you into something. The idea is to get you as soon as possible to the solution you're looking for.
Okay? Yes, if it's user assistance documentation, emotionally charged words are totally out of place. But in case it's a public website, as you said, sometimes it is required to allure the reader. Mm-hmm. And so in the overview, it could be permitted to use some marketing type of information, so to say. I have been in such a project, so yes. This was one of the characteristics. Okay, sorry to interrupt.
Thank you for the comment. No, it's your I cut you to comment on those things. Okay, let's move on. What is the next thing that you see? It's let's still stay on this sentence. What is the next thing that we see here that needs more structure?
I would put here perhaps a bulleted list. I would put like I would make a list and put addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division of numbers.
Excellent.
Just to add more structure and to make it more visible to the readers.
Easy to read, easy to scan.
Yes, exactly.
This is like one of the mandatory things that every technical writer should see here. Every time you have such a list, and we are just saying this and this and this and this is crying out, give me a bulleted list here. Just to make it scannable. This is what I intentionally created here. In such text, this is what you want to show and visualize.
And I would probably make it a bit more direct. I would not use the passive voice. This application is the best way. I would say with this application you could, and then I would put the list: add, subtract, multiply, divide, or something like this.
Directly.
I would simplify it. Yeah, I would make it more active voice and more direct.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay. Let's move down. What else do you see here?
This is a procedure, I think.
Now, that's a great comment. I think, right? It starts as if it's a procedure because it explains how to use the application, right?
Mm-hmm.
But is it really a procedure? I've especially put here.
More like an example, probably.
It's the star of this text. You will learn about the history of arithmetics here because you want to use the calculator app, right? Very, very often in software documentation, this is exactly what I've seen. You are supposed to describe the application. And then suddenly comes the product owner with great experience and says, no, here we need to explain how it came into reality. Let's merge here a small user story to grab the user attention. And right as you are about to tell the user how to use the app and what to do there, we have a small historical background summary in the middle of the topic, which has nothing to do with the rest of the content. History has a different place to inside the documentation, but not in our topic. Okay.
Not in our user assistance documentation, in any case.
Now, are you able, by looking at this text, to tell me how many tasks do you see actually in this text?
Well, first task is summing in the second paragraph.
Mm-hmm.
I can see subtraction also in the first paragraph, second task, so 2 tasks. And then in the fourth paragraph I see multiplication and division.
Okay.
So 4 tasks.
4 tasks. The next time you write a procedure, remember about this example that you see here. Actually, I've seen this a lot. A technical writer begins with an idea in mind, and he or she thinks, I'll just explain how to use the app. He or she starts with a summary, which is a good start, which explains what the application is capable of doing, but instead of breaking it down into structure of different tasks to follow, different ideas pop up in your mind and you just write them down. You mix together what else can you do with the application, and then you start to explain the first procedure, but then you make a reference to, oh, this could be done in 2 different ways. Let me explain also that in the same topic. The sample that you see with the calculator app is extremely simple and kind of, it might make you laugh. But in reality, when we write, especially complicated software documentation, we very often tend to do the same. And we mix together different procedures, and we don't know how to get out of that. And this is exactly what you should be looking at, and try to make sure that every time you write structure and you have a task to write, you describe only one single task. For example, if I wanted to tell you how to do an addition, how to sum up numbers, this is the only topic that I have to write, how to sum up numbers. Not to tell you everything about the world around arithmetics, around subtraction of numbers, but focus on one single task alone. Okay, thank you very much, Value, for the summary. It was great to hear your analysis of this text. Again, to all of you in the call, I've seen such samples as a part of your work application. When you apply for a job somewhere, this is the type of text that you can expect to be given, and this is what you need to be looking for. Where is the concept? How many tasks are out there? And sketch them and outline them to present this notion of structure. And very basic things like usage of bullet points or number lists is what the people are looking for in the text that you provide. Okay. Okay, we are at the almost at the top of the hour, with only a couple of minutes remaining. Are there any remaining questions that I can address in this time? Any questions you may have in addition?
Just if you could briefly explain the relation between structured writing and information mapping.
So information mapping is where you literally take, here is information typing, what I've prepared. The information mapping is this process in which you have this template, which represents the specific, let's say, task. Task is a concept, it's a piece of information. And when you take your unstructured information, just like the example we went through, and when you start filling in the data, and you're saying, you know, I'm mapping now the information I have in my mind or written down somewhere to a task topic type. And inside this task topic type, I need to organize the information in a specific way. So I'm mapping the pieces of information in my mind or in another information source to the actual content that represents the task in this case. So the summary information needs to go here in the task. The prerequisites information needs to go there. The result, it needs to be after the steps. This thinking process is the information mapping. I've mapped to a specific topic type, and then inside it, the information represents my task. Does this answer your question?
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Okay, so if there are no other questions, I suggest we stop here. Like I said, this is a part of the How to Write Software Documentation course. I'll be happy to see you in this course and to receive any questions you may further have. And feel free to also subscribe to my mailing list. I will share these slides with you in the Facebook group. And with that, I would like to thank you one more time for joining the call and being together with me today. Wish you a great rest of your day and see you. Bye bye.